Excellent. Good morning, good people, and welcome to the workshop titled, We Substituted Good Grammar for Intellect, which is a quote taken directly from the American classic, The Bluest Eye, written by the late, great Toni Morrison, who was a member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority at the same time as my great aunt, Aunt Alcine. My name is Brian Jackson, and I am an inclusive pedagogy instructional coach at the Community College of Aurora as a part of the Title V team. It's an honor to serve you all today with my excellent colleagues, the great Mandy Geddes and the great Rob Lee Welliver. We're here to serve you. Next slide, please.
Oh, yep, I'm on
it. As a part of today's learning, you'll hear a bit about the Title V grant and background information, as well as our theory and approach to the work we do. You hear about what it means to pull back the curtain, as well as our menu idea, along with the concept of no grades. Again, we're here to serve. Excellent. When it comes to Title V, if you're familiar with Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings, in her work, she reveals that the earliest colleges in America were created to serve only rich white males, excluding all demographics that existed in this country. So then throughout time, we see that there are HBCUs that come to exist, historically black college universities, which serve the purpose of educating Black African-American students. Then we get to see there are women's colleges, which focus in on educating women, which is excellent. In this day and time, now we have what are called HSIs, Hispanic Serving Institutions, which serve the purpose of meeting the needs of Hispanic Latinx students. The HSI designation is a federal designation, which includes money, which can only take place when an institution meets the 25% or more student population that identifies as Hispanic/Latinx. As a part of myself and my Title V team, we lead the work of the HSI grant across our entire campus at the Community College of Aurora. In leading our work, what we do is we focus in on 3 goals. Number 1, we look to implement culturally responsive pedagogy practices and curriculum refinement. What that means is we are revamping classes so that they better meet the needs of all students, but especially Hispanic Latinx students. Our second goal we focus in on is implementing 2 guided pathways, communities, and embedded learning communities by targeting students who are pursuing, yes, an arts of science or an associate of arts or associate of science degree. And really what that means is we're equipping students with the skills they need to navigate higher education, knowing how to ask questions, how to find financial aid, how to resolve an issue between an instructor and themselves, just skills to navigate higher education. And then a third and final goal is that we seek to strengthen data-informed culture and practices. And what that means is we are unpacking equity issues through data. We're looking at what is revealed through these percentages and numbers, but not just what's there, but also what's not obvious, because in what's not obvious, that's where the real work exists. Next slide, please. In our work as a design team, which included Rob Lee, Mandy, and myself, we really focused in on this passage from The Bluest Eye, written by Toni Morrison. Again, in this quote, it says, she wrote, "And fantasy it was, for we were not strong, only passive. We were not free, merely licensed. We were not compassionate, we were polite, not good, but well behaved. We courted death in order to call ourselves brave and hid like thieves from life." But we zeroed in on this next line right here, where she says, "We substituted good grammar for intellect." And when she says that, what we know in the historical context of our nation is that grammar, as we know it, was created by white males to serve white male culture, which again excludes all other demographics that exist. And so we're not saying that grammar is bad, but what we're saying is it doesn't capture the intelligence in all of what our students bring to the table. Not the all in all that our students bring to the table was not found in grammar. It's found in what is known as community cultural wealth. And so the concept of community cultural wealth was created by Dr. Tara J. Yoso. And what Dr. Yoso is saying is that, again, we're not excluding grammar. We're saying we welcome grammar to the table, but we're also welcoming the various capitals, community cultural wealths that our students bring to the table, such as familial capital, social capital, navigational capital, resistance capital, culture capital. All of these different types of wealth or capital, community cultural wealth that our students bring to the table, which can really drive our students and take their learning experience to another level. And so again, we're not excluding grammar, but we're saying that these capitals are as equally important as grammar capital. And now I'm gonna pass the mic on to my amazing teammates.
All right, I think that's me. So what we ended up developing is a several pronged approach to just completely disrupting the curriculum in English 121. Disrupting the expectations of writing academic essays and questioning why we ever required that in the first place, questioning our focus on final products, questioning our focus on assigning specific projects for students to be working on. And so to do that, we needed to disrupt a number of norms that we had been socialized to and that our students had been socialized to. So we needed to do things like unlearn silence. Our students and we have been taught to be silent in many situations. And so to do that, we had to relearn who we are, what we have to say, and how we want to say it. We wanted to disrupt this notion of focusing on a final product and instead to focus on this process and growth through process. And then we wanted to focus on our students' strengths, to draw on their strengths, their lived experiences, their passions, their prior knowledge. And to do that, we wanted to create a space where they could choose projects and create texts that were meaningful to them. We wanted projects and choices that were meant to affirm their authentic selves, their experiences, their knowledges, and their ways of knowing. So in doing that, we were asking students to take risks. And before we could ask them to take risks, we needed to build trust with them. We couldn't expect them to challenge social norms without building some trust that said this is a place where that's okay. Our first experience with this was like, we wanted students to create all these amazing things. And what they came to us and said was, yeah, I think this first time I'm just gonna maybe write an essay because they didn't trust us yet. They didn't trust us yet. And that was absolutely valid and fair. And so what we determined is that we needed to spend time, real time during the semester building trust. We needed to spend real time talking about why we wanted to disrupt what English 121 has always been. And what we were trying to accomplish. And so you can see in this calendar that we actually spend the first 4 or 5 weeks not doing composition. We spend the first 4 or 5 weeks thinking about the why in disrupting and why we thought what we thought about composition in the first place and what it means to challenge those norms. We had students reading the theory that we read. So our students read Yoso. Our students read Zaretta Hammond. We talked about culture and what that means in the classroom. We talk about socialization and how we've been taught to think what we think about college classes and taught to think what we think about composition classes. And we spent weeks doing this before we asked them to start a project. And so you can see we don't even get to projects until weeks 6 through 9. And that's when they start creating texts. And go to the next slide. And so in having students read Yoso, we wanted to give you some of the feedback we got from students as they read it. So we had students reading and perusal. They could create comments throughout as they read. And this is some of the feedback we got from students talking about their experience in reading Yoso, talking about their experience in thinking through this disruption of what it means to be in a composition class. Would somebody read this first comment for us? Just unmute and read.
Yes, exactly. It's cultural erasure, conformity. blending of societies, but only if it's in favor of the desirable society. This is so giving me Hunger Game vibes.
Thanks, Allie. Somebody read the second.
If you're not from the academic circle, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
If you're not from the academic circle, then the option left on the table for you is to get indoctrinated with a pre-existing thinking and philosophy.
Thanks, Carly-Ann. Paul, you want to read the third one?
Sure. This kind of approach allows a student to get their power back instead of conforming to society's own ideas.
So what we want you to hear in this is this embrace the students have of this concept, how much they were engaged in and empowered by thinking about composition differently. And the fact that their lived experience is one of silence, is one of assimilation, and wanting to disrupt that norm. I think next slide.
So I wanted to share a project that came early in the semester this year from this semester from one of my students in English 121, and I think was inspired a lot by the conversations we were having about unmaking and undoing our expectations. So let me change my screen share, excuse me. And I'm gonna start sharing again. In just a moment, I'll have this all ready. Apologies, y'all. Okay. This is a poem called I Am by Emerson Coto. I am the ordinary Hispanic kid. I am from the working family. I am from the country of El Salvador. I am from the poor people whose homes are broken and roofs corroded. I am from pupusas and tamales. I am from machismo culture. There's nothing special about me. I am the illegal immigrant. That's such a funny word. I am from Latino culture? No, I am from Hispanic culture. Latino is such an ugly word. I am indigenous. No, absolutely not. I am from El Salvador, from the hills of Spain, from the blood of the great conquistadors and the beautiful people of Spain. Oh, why can't I be more like them? With skin so fair and hair so light? Instead, I am from dirty skin and unworthy hair. Why must I be this way? No, I am not. I am from the jungles of Central America, by the waves of the Pacific Ocean. I am from the corn, tall and strong, from cacao trees, sweet and valuable. I am from the peasants of El Salvador. I am from the still beating heart of my indigenous brethren. I am the twinkle in the eyes of my ancestors fighting their oppression. Yes, even though I carry the blood of my colonizers, my mind has been decolonized. I am the wearer of this beautiful caramel husk. I am the bearer of this glamorous obsidian mane. I am the keeper of this striking mask with dark features blessed by my ancestors. I am the hope of my family, the hard work and sacrifice of my parents. Yes, I am this so-called illegal immigrant that racist bastards fear so much. I am the demeanor that will keep dreaming. I am the kid that you keep separated from his family. I am the farmer picking fruit in the hot sun, and the mothers making pupusas on the street. Yes, I am still part colonizer, a muggle, you could say. But also, I am Latino, I am indigenous, I am mestizo. I am the beauty that is my people. And when the student shared about his process in creation, what he wanted to show and the ideas he wanted to express was his journey of self-acceptance, right? So the journey that we see in this poem where he begins feeling filled with doubt and a desire to be different. This transformation, of course, didn't come simply from this class, but this class gave him the opportunity to express and explore that transformation. And what he created, I would argue, is a really beautiful narrative about family and culture that required research and conversation with his family in order to get to this point. Though what we don't necessarily see any of the research, we don't see those conversations, we see his narrative and his story in his poem. And I'm gonna go back to my presentation. So, as Mandy said, what we had wanted to do is create a way for students to be focused on process, to be focused on their strengths, their cultural strengths, their individual strengths, to unlearn that silence and find their own voice and their own power, and to decenter the professor, decenter us in the work. And so we came up with this menu, and let's see if this link works. It does. You can see at the front of our menu, we have our Toni Morrison quote. That was really the spark that helped us find our way to this idea. Though from there, we kind of moved around, and we, through our conversations, came up with this idea of a menu. We liked the idea of options, and so we came to menu, and we really decided to embrace the menu idea, just like going out to dinner in the olden days. So I'm gonna show you a few things on this. Y'all are welcome to visit the URL, and I'll make sure that gets in the chat, but I wanna share with you the introduction. So this is one of the first things we read around week 4 to help students understand then what they'll be doing this semester. And so can I get somebody to read this first paragraph, please?
Sure, I'd be glad to, but can you zoom in a little bit, please?
Yes, 100%. Is that better?
Yeah, this class is about your own strengths and about building your own path. You will use this menu to choose the projects you want to complete for the semester. Your goal is to complete appetizer and entree projects to 1, show that you've met the course outcomes listed in the key below, and 2, earn the grade you want. You can do that however you want. My suggested path includes 1 entree from each entree category, each paired with an appetizer. But for reals, you are allowed to and empowered to make your own path. If you want to do 2 analysis projects and skip the argument, cool. If you want to do 2 narrative projects and skip another category, cool. If you want to do 5 appetizers and skip an entree, cool. If you want to get towards the end of the semester and haven't earned the grade you want, do an extra appetizer or do an extra entree. You choose the path that best builds this on the strengths and passions you bring to the class. Just remember that you'll need to meet each course outcome at least once in the semester. So use the key below to make sure that your chosen path allows you to practice each of the listed outcomes.
And so part of what we tried to do with this is offload, I guess, the responsibility that we feel in ensuring that we cover all the outcomes and put it a little bit more on the students. This one helps them, I think, recognize that there are course outcomes, which they might not have otherwise paid attention to, and helps them be responsible for and observe and do that sort of metacognition of what are they learning, what are they thinking, how are the things that they're doing helping them to further or reach these outcomes. I'm sorry, Mandy, do we want to read these things you should know, or should we skip ahead to the outcome kind of key?
I think we should skip.
Okay. So, oh, but we got to talk about this. So one of the things we also recognize is that essays aren't the only way of expressing ideas, and they are a way that is really, that really values the skills and cultural wealth of white middle-class America. And I don't know, let me ask, Mandy, I want to ask you a question. Did you write any academic essays about any of this curriculum or any of these ideas as you prepped for this presentation?
Nope.
When was the last time you wrote an academic essay?
I wrote a literature review in the past 5 years.
Okay, awesome.
That's the extent of my academic writing since I graduated. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And so that felt a little weird that the only way that students were asked to demonstrate their knowledge is through essays, particularly now when we have so many other means of communicating and exploring and expressing ideas literally in our pockets. So every project can be an essay. Every assignment prompt can be an essay. It can also be a poem or a video or a blog or a wiki or a website or a podcast or a work of art. We believe, and we have found that through each of these different, to get to any finished product, like for example, a presentation or a website, there's a great deal of writing, reflection, editing, group work, peer review, and all of the pieces that are a process of good composition in reaching any point. So we encourage students to come with any ideas. And then as we move down here, we designed kind of a key, sort of a visual key to help students identify which of the outcomes they're working on. We're not art students or anything, so we simply grabbed Microsoft images to do this, but these key then link to each of the outcomes for English 121. And one of the nice things is that English 121 does have very broad and general outcomes, making it easy for us to be pretty flexible. Excuse me. So we've got our outcomes, as well as our culturally responsive pedagogy outcomes. And then if you go to any particular assignment, we'll do that one. You can see a variety of outcomes up at the top. So those images linked there to help students sort of start making those connections and see that. And then I believe Mandy as well, we ask our students to, when they submit a project, reflect on which of the outcomes they met or touched upon and in what ways. Okay. And then Mandy, were you going to share the race in the media? Or the my name is?
Yeah, let's do both. Let's start with race in the media. So one of the
Okay.
analysis projects is this assignment asking students to analyze, as the title says, race in the media. It's very, very open. Like they can go a lot of different ways with that, depending on what they're interested in. And we wanted to show you an example of a student who created a video for his race in the media project.
I'm gonna have to stop and reshare my screen because I forgot to
you.
optimize for sound. Okay.
Did I not raise you for better? How many times have I told you you have to be what? You have to be what?
Twice.
What?
Twice as good.
Twice as good as them to get half of what they have.
I included that video from Scandal because I think it applies to every person of color, especially women. People of color in the media are torn apart and overanalyzed to the max, especially when it comes to their capabilities and what they can do or their intelligence level compared to another person of a lighter complexion. This can come down to belittling or straight disrespecting them, and I'm here to talk about Miss Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or because people can't take the time to learn her name, AOC for short. So to give some background about AOC's journey, she's a Latin representative from the Bronx, New York. She made headlines as the youngest woman to ever run for Congress and win. What was extremely impressive is that she won against Joe Crowley, a 10-term representative for that district. And she only did it with the backings of her supporters, which was only a tenth of what he used for his campaign. She was a bartender and political activist prior and during her campaign. The media assumed she wasn't qualified because of her place of employment, but she actually graduated from Boston University with an economics and international relations degree. She's also worked for Ted Kennedy and Bernie Sanders. On an interview with The View, when asked why she ran, she said,
"You're only 28 years old. You'll be the youngest woman ever elected to Congress if you win. And in your campaign video, you said, women like me aren't supposed to run for office. Why did you run?"
I ran because I felt like we could do better and that we could be better as a country. And I looked around, and we hadn't had a primary election in 14 years in New York 14. So it was clear that no one else was going to be doing this work. And I figured, you know what, if no one else is going to do it, and if I feel like we can be better, then that means it's my responsibility to do something.
Not soon after she won and was elected into the House of Representatives, immediately critics and disrespect came. From the butchering of her name, to being made fun of for not being able to afford rent in DC right away, to even the clothes she wore. The media always seemed to have their attention on her for what seemed like any reason.
Resume that Shelby just mentioned about being from the Bronx. It turns out when you read deeper, she had a lot more formative years in Westchester County, New York, which is a little ritzier than the Bronx. I'm from.
Look, it's amazing. You know, she's been in office exactly about 24 hours, and she's comparing herself to FDR and JFK and Lincoln. Look,
nobody's demanding sanctions on China till they stop polluting. That screeching moron Ocasio-Cortez isn't.
Listen, it's like your kid spewing nonsense at you, and you're like, quiet, learn something before you come back to me. They're just letting her go. Yeah, I say keep going.
When she introduces herself, does she take on that Obama? You know, Obama put on accents.
She does the Latina thing where she does her, you know, Anastasio Ocasio-Cortez.
AOC didn't seem bothered in the slightest by what the news and media had to say about her. She simply started to do what personally I think her best move was, and that was to elegantly clap back at people. Anyone who she deemed worthy of correction had it coming on Twitter. This became a major outlet for her to get her name out even more, and she soon became the most followed person in Congress. While becoming more popular, she always tried to incorporate people into politics, so that the average person can understand what's happening, especially young people who don't normally pay attention to politics or news. A lot of her hearings were made into clips, and they were posted on YouTube and gained millions of views. Some of these clips were her most famous questionings like Mark Zuckerberg and Michael Cohen. These questionings even gave her praise by some people in her opposing party who initially criticized her. AOC is a perfect example of someone who can overcome negativity and always use her best traits to overcome anything anyone throws at her in life. She always strives to bring good change for people even if they think it's impossible and no one's backing her. She's an example for all people, not just people of color, to take inspiration from. She inspires people to fight for their communities and evolve into a better world where everyone can live and have a chance to be successful no matter who they are.
She's looking at herself on television right now. How are you feeling? Can you put it into words?
Nope. I cannot put this into words.
All right, your supporters here are very excited for you. This was a grassroots campaign. Can you believe the numbers that you're seeing right now?
I cannot believe these numbers right now, but I do know that every single person here has worked their butt off to change the future of the Bronx and Queens. That's what I know. That's what I know. And that this victory belongs to every single grassroots organizer, every working parent, every mom, every member of the LGBTQ community. Every single person is responsible for this. Well, I think what we've seen is that working class Americans want a clear champion, and there is nothing radical about moral clarity in 2018.
All right. So in that, you can see that student spent a ridiculous amount of time researching. The depth of analysis is incredible, right? That's exactly the type of analysis that we're always looking for as composition instructors. And that it's sometimes really hard to get out of an essay because that essay isn't the way the student can best showcase what they know and how they think. And so this student did this through a video, and it's really impactful and in depth and just amazing. Like there's so much emotion in that. And it was something that he was really passionate about. And so he did it. And he's a film student, so he made a video. And it worked out really well. And you can tell that there was so much process in that. He had to work through all of the different ways he wanted to voice over the clips. And I mean, the process is there. That was a text that he composed. Absolutely.
I'm going to share another assignment. This is one that students really love, and almost everybody this semester has done, everyone in my class has done this assignment. This is called My Name Is. So this assignment was built during the 2020 campaign when then Senator David Perdue mispronounced deliberately Vice President Kamala Harris's first name. And then coming out of that, there was this whole Twitter hashtag where folks were sharing the experience of having their names deliberately mispronounced, and also what their name means and where it comes from. And so this has been a really exciting project for folks, and they get really excited to explore their name. Even folks who have quote unquote like boring or like normal names. I have a student whose name is Emily, and she's like, my name's not, people don't mess it up, but it still matters, and it's still mine, and I want to do it. So Mandy, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, so this student decided that being that the assignment is a hashtag, she was going to do it and honor that. So she created a Twitter thread. And what I really love about this is that she took this assignment and turned it into something that immediately was impactful in the world. So she created this Twitter thread. It was live. She used the hashtag. So now every time somebody searches My Name Is as the hashtag, they're finding her work. And she really dug in. Her name is Michelle. So like Raul was saying, it wasn't necessarily relevant just to folks who have interesting names, right? Interesting being names that are outside of that white norm. She really dug into her name and where it came from and what she felt about it and her family. And it just turned into this whole research project she did with her family. And then she created this fun Twitter feed.
Let me find my presentation again. Okay, so hang on. So I saw some chat or some comments in the chat around grades. So part of what is really challenging about this plan and this opening things up is that we have students who are, at any moment during the semester, I have a student who's working on an argument research essay or a project, and I've got another student who's working on My Name Is, and I've got a third student who's doing an analysis of their favorite book or their favorite poem. And I've got somebody else maybe that just made something up because they didn't know what they wanted to do, or they had some idea. So our sort of skills and needs are all over the place, which has posed some challenges at times, which is why a big chunk of our focus has been on process, the creation and invention process, the thinking about audience and purpose. That is all the same, no matter what you're doing. But the grading, though, if we wanted students to feel that confidence and willingness to take those risks and to trust us and to share of themselves, their stories and their experiences and their histories, as well as create things that are outside of the traditional academic genre, we needed to break up the grades a little bit. So like Mandy said, we couldn't be grading in these traditional ways where we were putting upon assignments that were non-traditional, traditional grading expectations. And putting on, just as Morrison wrote, good grammar and valuing that more than we value the critical thinking or the process or the work that goes into that. And so, excuse me, we borrowed very heavily from Inouye. I don't have my book with me right now, but he does a lot of work around labor-based grading contracts, and we borrowed from Freire, Yasso, Zaretta Hammond, and Dr. Gina Garcia working with HSI work. And we built kind of a grading contract. The idea is that students get credit if they do the work, and they don't get credit if they don't do the work. So my grade book is totally binary. I either have ones, it's just ones and zeros. If work is done and it follows the prompt, it gets a 0, and if it, or a 1, excuse me, and if it's not done, it gets a 0 and some comments and feedback and encouragement to resubmit until it reaches that 1. And that means I'm not always looking at like the grammar of the work or all of the things that I might look at if I were grading an essay. I'm really cautious about like giving feedback based on the prompt, and not necessarily getting hung up on all the things, but instead, what's the project? What's the audience? What does the thinking and process look like? And this was a student in Mandy's class who wrote this bottom quote. It's shocking that something as subtle as silence can threaten survival. It struck me that this silence is not peaceful, nourishing, or even voluntary. It's a hideous kind of silence which is deeply embedded in our roots and is not acceptable, but it thrives in our culture. It thrives because people are scared to say or write anything. And so much of what we've set out to do is take away that fear and that silence. I'm going to show you. So this is kind of borrowed largely from ENOE. It was adjusted for my course this semester, but this is what my grading calculus looks like. So this is, at least at this moment in the semester, how students are being evaluated. It's just on the number of things that they did, and not on which grade they earned for anything. We are doing, in addition to a certain number of entrees and appetizer projects being completed, we are also doing these, students are reflecting each week in a discussion post on D2L about their work, like what they did, what worked for them and what didn't work. And then they're doing regular student-led writing groups that I'm not a part of, and because we're in Zoom, I can't even sit in and overhear. I kind of send them into their groups, and they're in charge of getting feedback, sharing their work, asking for help. And so I asked them to reflect on what worked and what didn't work in those writing groups each week. So this has been working. I think next semester I will make a larger gap between the A level and the B and C level, to make that a little bit more of a challenge and to sort of normalize. Like, I really want to, in my class, normalize the idea that like a B or a C is like a really good grade and you should be happy with that. I'm not quite getting to seeing that yet. Okay, I'm gonna move forward. So these are a couple of student comments about this class and their expectations and how they've experienced things so far this semester. And I'm not checking the chat, so if there's anything we need to address, Mandy or Brian, please go ahead and interrupt me. So one student wrote, I look forward to the near future. I have a plethora of ideas and topics just waiting to be talked and written about. I think my productivity levels are at an all-time high, but I want more. I have become obsessed with being better. Another student, I am not a super great student who's always getting A's, and I'm not always very motivated. So the fact that I am motivated in this class really means something. I was a skeptic about the idea to be the center of the learning process, and I kept asking myself, what does it mean? And how will my learning be impacted positively if there's no teacher? But let me tell you something. This class is the best class I've ever been to. It perfectly fits my busy mom life, and I love it. I frankly do. And last, I have learned that college writing is not about what someone wants from you. It is about finding and owning your craft through being vulnerable. So as you can see, I don't hopefully need to tell you what observations to take from this, but my takeaway from these students sharing is that they are feeling empowered, and that for the first time, perhaps, their voice and their story and their experience is more important, or perhaps the most important part of the class. All right, and with that, Mandy, do you want me to open up this sample?
So Rowley, I feel like we need to stop for a moment, and maybe we might not get to this. We do have some chat happening that there's skepticism that we are not preparing students to be successful in their future classes. And that by not requiring students to write academic essays, that means we're not preparing students to be successful. And so I think we need to have a conversation about that. And so it's big in the chat right now. And so I want to really emphasize the fact that one, students can write essays if they want to. If they feel like that is going to be the thing that makes them successful, they absolutely can. Two, all of the types of texts that students are creating in these classes are teaching them the skills they need in order to go into the next classes and produce whatever types of writing their instructors are going to require. Three, the English department doesn't exist to prepare students for those classes. The English department exists for English. We are our own discipline. And so while this tends to be a class that other disciplines look at as one that is meant to prepare students for their classes, we argue that in a history class, the history teacher should be teaching students to write in history. In a psychology class, a psychology teacher should be teaching students to write in that discipline. Creating text is discipline specific. And so we're teaching discipline specific texts in our English class. And so students are learning how to think through the process. Students are learning how to create a text, how to use their voice, how to find research and support their ideas, and all of the things that are in our outcomes. They are meeting and exceeding, I would argue, every outcome that we have for English 121. And they can do that without ever having written an academic essay in this class. And then when they go into the next class, they have all that knowledge and all those skills, and they thrive in creating those essays. And they're empowered to start disrupting these systems in the next classes. They know what can exist in higher ed, and they're empowered to advocate for that in their future classes.
One thing we found, or we have observed in the past, I remember many conversations in department meetings about how frustrating it is that we were sitting here teaching something like how to write a rhetorical analysis essay or an argument essay. And we are doing everything that we can do in order to provide step-by-step guides to follow our assignment prompt and help students follow our specific assignment prompt. And then we'll meet with a student later in the semester, or we'll see them in a different class, and they'll say, I'm really struggling with this essay in history. And I'll say, well, are you following the process that we did in class? And they'll say, well, no, that was for your class. That was for your essay. So one of the things that we're also really trying to do is separate the fact that individual assignments or individual tasks have certain steps, and instead embrace and encourage and demonstrate the way that every project, everything that you create, from a text message to your mother, to a Twitter thread, to a 48-page academic essay that's going to be published in the 4 Cs, has the same process. Brainstorming, idea development, thinking about audience and purpose, drafting, revising, getting feedback, redrafting, research. All of that went into every one of the projects that we've shared at this point. And there's another, I haven't been following all of the chat, but I will also add that our discipline is really fortunate that our outcomes are very broad. And so we are encouraged to teach rhetoric, and we are encouraged to ask students to think about audience and purpose and genre. There's nothing that says that we need to teach them to do an argumentative essay. We need to teach the skills of argument and audience awareness. but there's nothing in the English 121 outcomes that dictate any of the ways that we've sort of always thought about what a composition course looks like.
I'm outside this presentation, but I do want to jump in and say that one of the things I can see from both sides of this is an honest desire in every case to prepare the students the best they can. And so I want to say that I see that on both sides of the comments that are happening. And so I really, everybody here is honoring the student in the way they feel best. And I think it's important to honor that.
Yes, and thank you for that statement. That was powerful. I will say one of the most important things is it's out in the open now, and we're having the conversation. And the only way for change to take place is to communicate, to share ideas and reasoning and all the logic behind decision making, and making sure that we are listening to understand as opposed to respond. And so again, it's on the table now, and this is a discussion that I believe will never go away, all while change is taking place. So it looks like that may be our time, team. Just want to thank everybody for being here. Again, it was an honor to serve, and we just hope everyone stays safe this weekend and has a wonderful time getting away, resting. And again, thank you.
Thank you all.